Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. I do want to switch gears, and I do want to do something a little bit different right now here on the Aaron Torres Pod. So one thing that I have noticed throughout my career is this. It is that when it comes to creating content, you guys and girls love hearing about everything that has happened, but you also love hearing about everything that will happen. When I worked at FoxSports.com, one of the most jarring, interesting things to me was that the articles that always did the best, that people always consumed the most, had to do with stuff that was going to happen, not what has already happened. So when I say what's going to happen, what I mean is stuff that is speculative, that looks ahead. Mock drafts, bracketology, coaching carousel, hot seats, recruiting rankings, things that speculate out into the future. And so while on Friday's Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, I obviously have plenty of reaction to the 2022 NBA Draft, what I also want to do is do something a little bit fun and look ahead to the 2023 NBA Draft. And what I want to do over the next few minutes is I just want to rip through about 10 to 12, maybe 15 prospects that you need to know for next year's NBA Draft. Guys that recently graduated high school, that are going to be freshmen in college, guys that are already in college, guys that are playing in the G League Ignite program, and of course overseas guys as well, to kind of just give you a first look at the 2023 NBA Draft. Now, to be clear, this isn't a mock draft, mainly because we have no idea who is going to be picking where when it comes to next year's draft. But what I want to do is rip through about 10, 12, 15 prospects that you absolutely need to know for the 2023 NBA Draft. Again, this is not a mock draft, but it is just guys that you need to know, about 10, 12, 15 guys that you need to know for the 2023 NBA Draft. Let's get into it. Let's start. And I will say this about the 2023 NBA Draft cycle. I don't claim to be an international recruiting expert or guru, but there is one player that universally, you read any mock draft, any draft writer, anything that has to do with the 2023 NBA Draft, and they will tell you that there is one guy that has clearly established himself as the favorite to go number one overall. It is universal. It is a kid named Victor Wembanyama from France. Picture Chet Holmgren. But picture Chet Holmgren about 2 to 3 inches taller with a big head of hair and a little bit of a longer wingspan, and that is exactly who this kid is. 7'3". Again, he's from France, super athletic. Defensively, he is just a total game changer at the rim. You can't get anything. He swats everything. But then in terms of his offensive game, he's very much Chet Holmgren, very much new age, a guy that can not only score in the paint and in the post, but can also rip, grab and go, can put the ball on the floor, can hit a three-pointer, can hit fadeaways. I know we're going to use the term a lot over the course of this segment, kind of a new age player, but that is exactly who he is. Now, in terms of the negative, I'll tell you this. If you loved the Chet Holmgren is he too skinny debate of the last 2 or 3 months, well, you're getting it big time going forward here with this kid because he is about 7'3". I guess he's probably right around Chet's size, about 195, 200, and he is going to have to put on a ton of weight. But this kid, you can just see the potential. He is oozing with potential. He is a player that is the consensus number one going into next year, not a international recruiting guru or international scouting guru. But this kid appears to be the truth. He is the consensus number one, Victor Wembanyama from France. Number 2, the first college player, and a player I have a feeling we'll be talking a lot about on this show because he's playing for a really good team, a coach that we know well, and a program that we talk about quite a bit. That is Nick Smith, a guard at the University of Arkansas. Really interesting player. You put film of this kid on, he looks like he's about 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", because he has this crazy long wingspan and he's crazy athletic. He's actually only about 6'4", but it doesn't really matter because he is a game changer across the board, and I believe he will be a game changer and probably the best freshman in college basketball next year. Again, he's about 6'4", but super athletic. He's a guy that can score at all three levels, can hit a three-pointer, can take you off the dribble, crazy finishes in the paint. He is also a guy that can create for others. Now, that's probably not going to be his role at Arkansas. They have another guy we'll talk about in a minute, Anthony Black, who's more of a point guard, who will probably be handling the ball and creating off the dribble for Arkansas. But Nick Smith Jr., another guy you can just see oozing with potential, oozing with talent. He is going to Arkansas next year. I believe he is the best American prospect in this class. Really excited to see how he fits in with all those other star players at Arkansas. Nick Smith Jr. is at number 2. Number 3, Arkansas had the number 2 ranked recruiting class in the country. You know who was number 1? It was Duke. And you know who the face of that group is? Dereck Lively, 7'2" center. That is going to be a freshman at Duke next season. Frankly, a lot of the same stuff I said about Victor Wembanyama, I will say about Dereck Lively here, but he's about 7'2". He's a human eraser. I've seen him in person not a bunch, but a handful of times. And 2 things really stand out to me about Dereck Lively. One, plays super hard and is competitive. And I think sometimes when you get these big kids that are young, early in their careers, they're so much bigger and so much more athletic and so much they can dominate without having to exert maximum effort. And the one thing I love about watching this kid is that when I've seen him in person, it is 100% all the time. Trying to block everything, trying to rebound everything. I saw him in a game where I swear it felt like he got every single rebound off the board. Now, I will say offensively, his game needs to continue to evolve. Obviously, it's a year until he will be draft eligible, and there will be plenty of time for him to figure that all out. He has shown a three-point shot, through the years in high school. It is something that is developing, and I'll tell you this. I don't think he would have selected Duke if Duke wasn't going to give him the freedom to be able to show off kind of a jump shot and an extended game outside of 15 feet. Although I will say at Duke next year, he will probably do his best work in the paint. If it wasn't for Victor Wembanyama, we'd probably be talking about Dereck Lively as not only the number 1 pick, but I believe one of the best rim protectors, shot blockers that we have seen come through high school in quite a few years. Really excited to see him in college. Wouldn't be surprised if he was a National Defensive Player of the Year type kid because he not only has the skills, but he also plays so hard. Dereck Lively at number 3. Let's get to number 4, another college kid that you need to know. Really excited to see him. It wouldn't be NBA draft season if there was no Kentucky guys involved. And so let's get to the best Kentucky prospect in this draft, and that's Cason Wallace. Again, not saying this is going to be the draft order. Not saying Cason Wallace is going to be the number 4 overall pick, or Nick Smith is going to be 2, or Dereck Lively is going to be 3. But I will tell you this about Cason Wallace. I absolutely love this kid's game. And I think because a lot of the things that happen at Kentucky this offseason, both good and bad, the bad being losing to St. Peter's in the NCAA tournament, losing Shaedon Sharpe to the NBA draft, the good being Oscar Tshiebwe coming back, I think a lot of people have forgotten that Kentucky has a lottery pick coming in the backcourt, and this kid is going to be really good. What I love about Cason Wallace, a lot of the same things that I said about Dereck Lively are true with Cason Wallace. He is a kid that even at 18 years old competes on both ends of the floor, crazy competitive, crazy athletic, a guard that can take people off the dribble, a guard that can finish in the paint, a guard that's not afraid of contact, a guard that can step out and hit threes, but also a guy that's going to defend his butt off. And I will say, as great as Kentucky was this past year, and they were really good. I think it's easy to criticize Kentucky right now in this moment. Oh, they're so disappointing. They're so this, they're so that. Here's the bottom line. Kentucky was basically a top 10 team all year, dealt with injuries, but they didn't really have a guy like Cason Wallace on last year's team. They had a couple offensive-minded guys, Ty Washington, Kellen Grady. They had nobody like Cason Wallace who plays on both ends of the floor. Really excited to see Cason Wallace in Kentucky blue, and I do think kind of him, Oscar Tshiebwe, I think it's easy to sleep on Kentucky, easy to say it's over for the Calipari era, all that good stuff. I'm not totally sure I see it, and I am really excited to see this kid play college basketball next year. Let's stay in the college ranks, and let's go with the first player that is returning to college basketball next year, and that's Caleb Love at North Carolina. And first of all, you look at most mock drafts right now, they do not have Caleb Love as a top 5, top 10 pick. And I think it's ridiculous. I think every year, these early mock drafts, and I'm not saying this is a mock draft, but these early mock drafts, they always just throw all the elite freshmen into the top 5, the top 10, and every single year we have guys going into their sophomore, juniors, and senior years who emerge into lottery-level talents. This year it was Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. It was Keegan Murray from Iowa. It was Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. It was Jaden Ivey, who I think we all kind of thought was a lottery-type talent. I don't know if anybody thought he was going top 5 in the NBA draft. And so I bring it up because I think that there are going to be guys that were in college basketball last year who are going to emerge, and I think Caleb Love is as good a bet as anybody. This was a guy that came in as a 5-star, kind of played well towards the end of his freshman year. This year, a little bit of an adjustment under Hubert Davis, but by the end of the year, he was one of the best players in college basketball, period. Forget NBA draft prospect, freshman, sophomore, junior. He decides to come back to North Carolina, and I think he's going to ball out. As I said, he was great down the stretch, had 30 points against UCLA in the Sweet 16, 28 points against Duke in the Final Four. And I'll tell you this, I think when you start talking about like preseason National Player of the Year conversations, Caleb Love, to me, is going to be the front runner. This is a guy that has gotten significantly better year over year in college basketball. I believe he'll be one of the best kind of combo guards in college basketball. Caleb Love at number 5. Number 6, let's kind of stay in that same vein of college guards, college lead guards. We'll go back to the freshman class. I am really excited to watch a kid named Keyonte George, who is going to be playing at Baylor. From the college basketball perspective, I'll tell you this. He is very interesting because Baylor has experience at basically every position on the floor except point guard. They have LJ Cryer and Adam Flagler on the wings. They got Jonathan Chamachachua and Flo Thamba down low. The one thing they need is a point guard. By the way, they added a couple nice transfers, Jalen Bridges, Caleb Lohner. The one thing they are missing is just a difference maker at point guard, and I believe he can be that guy. About 6'4", this is Keyonte George I'm talking about, out of the state of Texas. He played at one of the Florida prep schools this year, but he just is a really special player and really a player that I think has he's just a fun player to watch because he has this super athletic gear to him. Gets a rebound, kind of taking it in transition, then boom, goes right by you. Just beats you off the dribble, almost in a way like Jaden Ivey did this year, where there were just moments where Jaden Ivey was just like, I'm more athletic than you, I'm getting to the rim, try and stop me. That's who Keyonte George can be, and I'm also excited about his capabilities as a playmaker for those other good Baylor players as well. If Keyonte George pops, if he plays like a top 10 pick, Baylor is a national championship caliber program. Really excited to see him next year in college basketball. Let's leave the college ranks again. Let's go to the G League Ignite program. That's, of course, the G League program where all the players don't want to play college basketball have played. Jonathan Kuminga and Jalen Green this past 2 seasons ago. Jaden Hardy this past year. And there was a player in the program this past year who's a really interesting prospect for next year's draft. And his name is Scoot Henderson, okay? Really interesting story here. He actually graduated high school at 17 and enrolled in this G League Ignite program knowing that he was going to have to be there 2 years. And so you fast forward this past year as a 17-year-old, he'll be 18 next year, was playing against professionals, and I thought really handled himself pretty well. He's a point guard. He's not super big. About 6'2", 6'3", whatever. But he's super quick, he's strong, and the one thing that stood out to me, he was playing against grown men last year in the G League Ignite program and was absolutely fearless, attacking the rim, finishing in the paint, stepping back, leading an offense. And this is a kid, now keep in mind, left high school at 17, 2 years playing against pros before the night of the NBA draft. He is a kid, I wouldn't be stunned if he ends up in the top 5, maybe the first guard off the board. Scoot Henderson, a name that you really need to know. I think he is going to be excellent next year in the G League Ignite program. You probably won't know much about him, but come draft night, I guarantee you he's going to be a potential top 5 pick. Let's keep it going. Let's go back to college basketball. And what did I just say a minute ago? There are guys, and you're going to look at mock drafts today, tomorrow, over the weekend, whatever. And there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be freshmen this coming year. There's not going to be nearly enough paid attention to the guys with NBA potential who are returning to college for a second, third, fourth year. We just talked about it with Caleb Love. Let's go to another player that I think you need to know, and his name is Arthur Kaluma, and he plays at Creighton, okay? About a 6'7", 6'8" wing, super athletic. It was interesting. I actually had to talk to somebody over at Creighton the other day, and this kid could have gone pro this year, almost like a Ben Mathurin. I've talked about Ben Mathurin a few times on this show. Ben Mathurin could have gone pro this year, knew he wasn't ready, came back and dominated college basketball this past season, and I think Arthur Kaluma can do that next year. Averaged 10 points per game as a freshman, was all Big East freshman team, and really blew up at the end of the season. 17 points against Providence in the Big East tournament. Providence ends up being, of course, a Sweet 16 team. He has 24 against Kansas in the NCAA tournament. Kansas, of course, went on to win the national championship, and Arthur Kaluma went off for 24. Creighton is a really good team. There's been a lot of buzz about them. Part of it is because of Baylor Shireman, the addition. But remember, there are going to be players in college basketball that next year blow up, turn into pros. I believe that Arthur Kaluma is that. I would not be shocked if he ends up as a top 10 pick. I mentioned earlier Nick Smith Jr. at Arkansas, really interesting player. While we're on the subject of Arkansas, they really have three guys that could be one and dones, but let's stick with the second guy, Anthony Black. I will say this. Out of every freshman in next year's class, and I know I just talked about Nick Smith Jr., talked about Keyonte George, talked about Cason Wallace. I am as intrigued by Anthony Black as anybody. About 6'7", a point guard, really a late developing kid, but a really confident kid. Just plays at his own pace, gets to his spots, can hit threes, gets others involved. And again, a player who really developed over the back end of his high school career, picked Arkansas over Gonzaga, picked Arkansas over Texas, and I am excited to see this kid at the college level. It's worth noting he was just with the U19 national team that went to Mexico and won the gold medal for international play. Gets to Arkansas late. And I heard Eric Musselman say something to the effect of he picked up the offense in a matter of a day or two. He was ahead of some of the veterans on the team, some of the veteran college basketball players that have come to Arkansas. So this kid is smart. He knows how to play the position. He gets basketball. Anthony Black, I will say I am as excited to watch him as anybody in college basketball next year. Let's start to wrap here. Number 10, it's interesting. I just mentioned two players that will play at Arkansas. There's a third guy that is from the state of Arkansas who's going to Oregon named Kel'el Ware. Really interesting player, 6'10", 7-foot center. Interesting thing about him, first of all, just going to Oregon, getting away from Arkansas. He was one of these kids that didn't want to play close to home. Hey, listen, it's their own prerogative. You do what you want. But what's interesting about him is I've heard Paul Biancardi, who is the national recruiting expert at ESPN, say that he believes Kel'el Ware has as much natural talent as anybody in the 2022 high school class, and that if he puts it together at Oregon, he could be the potential number one overall pick next year. The problem with Kel'el Ware is his motor. Does he play hard all the time? And so this is a guy to keep an eye on. You're looking for some Pac-12 games next season. Kel'el Ware at Oregon, 7 feet, rim runner, shot blocker, a ton of natural talent. Got to work on the motor, all that good stuff. Really quickly, a couple other names you need to know. I just mentioned Pac-12. Amari Bailey at UCLA. So this is the kid. I hate to say it. I hate to bring it up, but this is how you'll probably remember him. He's the kid whose mom, at least for a little bit, I don't know if they still, did date the rapper Drake. And so that he kind of became a household name because of Drake. This kid's a hooper, man. And he was hurt most of his senior year. He kind of fell down recruiting rankings, but he's a really good player. He's a really good player, 6'4" guard. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball with Tiger Campbell at point guard. Amari Bailey will very likely play off the ball for a good chunk of next year, but he's a playmaker. He's super athletic. I'll say this. I think when it comes to UCLA, this is no disrespect, but Johnny Juzang, I think last year there were times where the offense didn't flow as well as it could. The ball kind of stuck in his hands. The offense didn't wasn't as crisp as it could be. Johnny Juzang's obviously gone off to the pros, and I think Amari Bailey is going to be a difference maker for them. I really like UCLA going into next year. I'm not saying they should be favored over UNC or Arkansas or even Houston, but they are a really, really good team going into next year. Really quickly, I'll rip through a couple other names to know. Jordan Walsh, third Arkansas guy, wing, super athletic, plays super hard. Eric Musselman actually tweeted at our Torres on Arkansas account that he is a violent defender. So a guy that plays both ways. Really excited to see him at the college level. Speaking of Torres on, Brandon Miller, wing from Alabama. Excited to watch him. Julian Phillips, a late commit to Tennessee, is a guy that could end up being a first-round pick. Also, I mentioned Dereck Lively from Duke. Dereck Whitehead, super athletic wing. He is committed to Duke. I think he's a top 10 type player. Kyle Filipowski, a 6'10" kind of stretch four, is also committed to Duke. So Duke could have 2 to 3 first-round picks next year as well. And I think that's really it. I'm trying to think of anybody else I missed. I will say Marcus Sasser from Houston was a guy that rose really quickly in the draft rankings this past year. He decided to come back. I think he's a guy, he's going to average 20 a game. He is going to be a National Player of the Year candidate. I could see him getting into the first round. And then outside of that, I think I hit on all the big ones, basically. Those are the guys that I really like. I'll tell you this, if you're watching college basketball next year, the guys you need to know, outside of the obvious, Caleb Love, guys like that, you need to know Nick Smith Jr., and you need to know Anthony Black at Arkansas as well as Jordan Walsh. You need to know Cason Wallace for sure at Kentucky. You need to know Keyonte George at Baylor. And like I said, Amari Bailey at UCLA. There's a couple really interesting prospects. The Duke guys, of course, Dereck Lively, Dereck Whitehead, Kyle Filipowski. If you enjoyed this segment, do me a favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure to listen to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. New episodes available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.